Why is it so challenging for an individual who has been in a trauma-bonded relationship and now they're aware of it, or they're in a family that has maybe had some stagnant behaviors and patterns that doesn't want to grow? Why is it so hard for one individual in a family or a relationship to try to improve and grow and develop new habits and transform themselves and think differently and talk differently and act differently? Why is it so challenging in a family dynamic or an intimate relationship to grow when others aren't willing to grow?
While we all are evolving creatures, I mean, I think it's kind of intrinsically what the experience of being human is. It's a process of evolving, becoming, a process of movement. Yet at the same time, our nervous system is wired to prefer the familiar. Simply, we don't like change. While we can change and we can create incredible change and transformation, our nervous system actually prefers to stay the same. It finds change and movement very stressful. So when faced with change, often in ourselves even, how to do the work was really around that concept of the resistance and the reason why we're so stuck in these habitual patterns, because anytime we set the intention to do different, and then more so when we follow through with making new choices, we do meet that pull back to that familiar through the thoughts in our mind, the discomfort in our body. Before we know it, we're right back in those habitual patterns. So we struggle to change, even though we can change. Our nervous system prefers us not to. And our relationships equally struggle. When we begin to experience someone anew, or when we're the person making new choices, especially in a family where dynamics and roles have been repeated and practiced and validated for so long, then really like dominoes, right? Here's someone new that's maybe putting a new perspective on the family experience. Might be really difficult to hear, right? A different truth about how it was when we have our own rehearsed story of how the family is or isn't or whatever it is. More so when someone begins to act in a new way, then chances are there's going to be some impact on that dynamic.
Interesting.
There's going to be a challenge to the individual identity. Sometimes there's the challenge to the family identity. What we thought we were, now maybe we're not as much.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be a reorganization of the different roles within the family. So again, it comes down to change. How equipped is each individual in whatever relationship, dyad, or family unit to deal with the stress of change? And as far as I see it, a lot of us who are raised with past generations were not yet equipped. We didn't have the tools, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the attuned caretaking in our childhood to learn how to navigate the stress of change.
Wow. I know you've talked about this before on here, but how did you, for those that didn't hear this in a previous interview, how did you navigate this as you were evolving, changing, growing, developing in your 20s, 30s with your family dynamic? Not in your intimate relationship,
Yes.
although that has evolved and changed as well, but let's start with the family dynamic before we talk about intimate dynamic.
Yeah, it was really challenging in my family, coming from a family that was very boundaryless, codependent. We had a very unified family identity. I was kind of taught growing up that family is everything, with this idea of putting family needs first, even going back to this concept of selfishness. So all of that was, kind of ingrained in my belief system, and very dynamically, like I was sharing when we began, showed up in how I showed up, or how little I showed up in my relationship. So as I started to become aware and see all of the moments where I wasn't giving myself space, and it was glaringly present in my relationship with my family, that I was living actually in quite close physical proximity. By this point, I'd moved home to the Philadelphia area. They were living right outside of Philadelphia, so I had endless opportunity to be at family dinner on Sunday, or my mom's, standard doctor's appointment, with a lot of health issues that continued with my mom until her old age. So saying that to say there was a lot of the same dynamic happening at home, and I was awakening to the possibility of, and necessity for me, of creating some more distance, of not being endlessly available, of beginning to set new boundaries. And for the better part of several months, I would try to decline invitations. I would try to decline phone calls and not be immediately available. And I say try because it was always met with a running theme in my family was when there was distance, in especially contact, immediately, because there was so much health trauma that happened, health, concerns and worry and anxiety. The immediate belief or worry would be when someone was out of contact for an unpredictable amount of time, it must be because they're something terrible happened to them.
Interesting.
Are they in the hospital? Are they sick? Is something wrong?
So there was a history of fear. Which would create this
hypervigilant monitoring of contact. When I didn't call, for instance, on the regular, weekly phone call, it was, is everything okay? Just tell me everything is okay. And I would call at a very particular time frame up until this period of time where I was like, well, wait a minute, you're only doing that, right, to placate this kind of anxiety cycle. You don't actually want to be calling in those moments. Yes, I wanted contact with my family, but I didn't need to have regular contact every 3 days to tell them that I was alive, right?
Right.
So saying that to say, I tried to put up boundaries to create separation, to create distance and space for me to begin to honor what I wanted and needed. By this point, I was building a practice. I was in a committed relationship. I had other things that I wanted to be putting my time and attention to. It was always met with this fear, this worry, that would escalate into, I would get texts like, Jesus Christ, Nicole, just tell us you're okay. We're getting worried. We're going to call hospitals, like endless. So I came to the really difficult decision to make a break and to take, I always kind of start to say ask for space, but I didn't really ask for space. I more or less told my family that I was going to take space away from the family unit, that I would be unavailable for any sort of obligation or, anything that for the foreseeable future. And because I didn't trust myself to communicate to them in person. I was so afraid that when my mom started to cry or my dad became upset because my mom was upset or my sister was devastated because her and I were very trauma bonded in a codependent relationship, trying to navigate my mom's health. I didn't trust myself to stand in my boundary. So I took the opportunity to write a very long email expressing things that I hadn't fully been able to share with them in terms of what I was coming to realize and how things in the past had impacted me, and end it with that statement that I was taking time away. And I didn't know how much time I would want to take or need to take, nor did I know how they would react to my request. I was very much aware of the possibility that they would be so devastated and hurt that the door wouldn't be open on the other side of it. But at that point, I knew, probably from that deeper intuitive place, my heart was telling me that I did need more space than I was able to create. So it ended up being the better part of, I think, 18 months before I started to, really get curious about where they were at. I had built a lot of self-trust in that 18 months, meaning I was getting more confident that I could engage with them again. And if the dynamic was exactly as I left it, I was gaining more confident that I could continue to maintain my boundaries and to, live into the relationship dynamic that I wanted, regardless of what they were unable or able to do. And very gratefully, not only did they email me back near immediately, they let me know that they had been in family therapy and individual therapy and all the different types of therapy since I had, ended contact with them. Cool. And while it was very devastating, they, on some level, were appreciative of the opportunity that it gave them and us to kind of look at things newly. We've re-engaged contact over several family therapy sessions, which felt very safe to me because I wanted to have a contained conversation, not knowing essentially what I was walking into. And I signed online for that first Zoom session, and I saw my mom, my dad, and my sister for the first time in 8 months. And we had some difficult conversations and had some future-based conversations, and where I was able to kind of acknowledge what I wanted and needed in the relationships moving forward and intended to create for us. And since then, it's just been really a gift in a lot of ways. We've been able to not only reorganize as a family, we've been able to separate. That has actually allowed us to deepen and build like deeper, actual, real now authentic connections, which has been really beautiful.
That's pretty cool, but it's really scary to get to that place, it sounds like, because what some of your family were thinking of, like, okay, I'm going to create, I don't know, hyper safety was actually unsafe for you and didn't feel healthy, right? This idea of I want to make sure everything's safe and okay is actually an unhealthy or unsafe feeling. And so you had to kind of break the cycle, which you talk about in the book. But that's scary too. How are they going to react? What if they disown me? What if they never want to speak to me again? How are they going to talk about me to my friends? Like, this idea of being outcasted in a sense is also scary. But it sounds like for you, you guys were able to come back and create a more meaningful relationship. But I think it's so scary for us to think about, whether it's family or friends or intimate partners, like having a boundary that might seem so extreme for a while because you need it, to come back to loving yourself the way that you seek that love, and then reconnecting with that partner, family, or friend, right? But it can be extremely challenging.
Oh, it actually, because we're social creatures and we've evolved to connect in groups, to physically survive, to emotionally gain the support that we need, any thought of any actual experience of rejection, any imagined rejection or fear of it, activates actually the pain center in our brain. So we
Really?
physically feel pained.
And your heart feels this pain too, like
clenching.
Yeah.
And then so for me, complicating that with my mom increasing in age, having very real health concerns. I mean, in the back of my mind, I was like imagining the possibility that I might not have an opportunity, depending on how long I decided to stay disconnected. I was entertaining the possibility that something could have happened to my mom. She could physically die in that period of time. And then how would that be? But my commitment, at the same time, my commitment and that inner knowing that that is what we all needed, was so strong that I was able to make that really, really difficult choice.
In terms of relationships, I'm curious, what is the healthiest attachment style that we should be seeking to have? And what is the most common attachment style that most people have in relationships?
Yes. Most people do not have a safe and secure attachment. This feeling of inner safety and security, peace, the ability to be yourself, and the curiosity to allow someone else to be curious of who someone else is, right? Not to be demanding, domineering, manipulative so that they're the person that you need them to be, to actually allow them the space to be themselves, express their wants, express their needs, and just be who they are. Very few of us have that, of course, because we didn't have that in childhood. We didn't learn. Our body, for a lot of us, a lot of this book is about unlearning, peeling back, right? All of the definitions of love and relationship we've been taught, all of the embodied ways that we've habitually related to other people, so that we could actually teach ourselves, not just read a book and be like, oh, this is what a safe and secure attachment looks like. Actually teaching our mind and body how to be safe and
experiencing and feeling it, living it, not just analyzing it.
And for a lot of us, that living and that practice begins with ourself first. Do I feel safe and secure in who I am? Can I explore my perspectives, whatever they might be? Do I know what they are? Can I explore my emotions? For decades, my answer was no. You would ask me what I wanted to do for dinner, I couldn't tell you. I didn't know what I even how I wanted to spend my time on a Saturday, let alone how I'm feeling. Right. So a lot of this reconnection begins with creating space or a practice in our world to introduce ourselves. And that was a big reason why I even wrote the workbook, How to Meet Yourself, is because we don't have that connection to us yet.
Right.
We're not safely and securely connected. I'm a million miles away on my spaceship. Someone else is endlessly distracting through work or achievement, right? Or whatever it is. Or I'm always agitated and erupting at the world around me, because the reality of it is I'm not safe in my body first and foremost. And then when I'm able to be safe in my body, then the byproduct of that often is developing that safe and secure relationship with someone else, where they feel calm and grounded, and like someone is interested in valuing them for who they are. And you're able to, like I always used to say with the clients I would work with in couples therapy, sit next to each other on a couch and envision a future and negotiate, kind of making sure that each of your needs and wants are factored into that. The large majority of us fall into a more dysfunctional attachment style, whether it's avoidant, where you're emotionally shut down, and like me for many years, there's no emotional connection. I'm a little bit more anxious avoidant, where there's anxiety around distance and a pursuing pattern. There could be a disorganized attachment. I'm just giving kind of some of the standard ones, but there's many ways. I focus a little less on what box category do I check, and a little more on just individually exploring, right, how you show up in relationships and how does it feel for you when you do.